Very happy to be able to welcome to the podcast today Dr. Matthew Marquardt. And firstly, I will reiterate the apology that I made to you just before we started recording. As the busiest man in triathlon, I felt bad about sending you an invite to come on the podcast because I just don't know how you find the time in the day. So thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be on any sort of podcast. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. How did you schedule some time in? How do you actually do that?
You find a way. You find a way. There's always a couple minutes here and there that you can piece together.
I actually don't know how you do it, but I do enjoy following your Instagram to see how some of your days are very well planned out in advance. Would that be the best way to describe it?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think every day starts with a structure. And so for me, they don't necessarily feel like they're planned out that much, but I certainly, because there's a structure behind it that repeats day after day, even though every day looks different. And so, to me, it just feels like another day, but I certainly understand that from an outsider's perspective, it looks like chaos in some ways. So yeah, no, it all works out. And I've kind of found my routine and my pattern over the years.
Yeah. I thought you'd magically worked out how to cram 36 hours into 24. Do you think that comes from your swimming background and sort of swimming, studying Princeton? I mean, that's an academic institution in its own right. And even back when you were a full-time swimmer, that creates a heck of a lot of discipline, especially at the level that you swam at, because you made a few Olympic trials, didn't you? Or at least one.
Yeah. So it certainly came from, I qualified for the 2016 US Olympic trials and swam throughout college. And so, it was just something that I always did. Like in college, I was a chemistry major and an entrepreneurship minor, and also swimming 20 to 25 hours a week. And, you just get used to it over time. And so if someone's going from zero to that, it's a massive load. It's a massive shift. But when you do it for long enough, you just kind of get used to it. And the same thing with medical school. Like I started triathlon when I started medical school. And when I started out, 15 hours a week for training was a lot, to balance with med school. And then over time, I've gotten better at being able to handle the load of training and also gotten more efficient with studying. So now I'm able to kind of handle closer to 25 hours of training a week. You just adapt.
What about the cognitive demand? Because I'm sure you're taking a fairly fatigued brain into some of the academic stuff, especially the study and the research. How do you balance that out?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the cognitive load is something that is probably the thing that I think is the most challenging. And I kind of would say it all comes down to priorities of where are you going to put that cognitive load? And so if you haven't noticed, for the past week and a half, I haven't posted anything on social media. And so there are periods of time where life gets really busy and it's just I don't have the cognitive bandwidth right now to do social media, or sometimes text messages go unread for a week or a week and a half. Sometimes emails don't get responded to as quickly as they can. And so there is a constant kind of prioritization of where do I want to spend this cognitive load? Because I would say that's certainly the hardest thing of where are you gonna allocate it all?
Yeah. If we talk absolute load, you 15 hours when you first started, but you're not a huge amount above that now. You're probably circa that 20 hours with maybe some 25-hour weeks, unless you go off and do something random like Cape Epic, which we'll talk about. How much of your life is apportioned to work that isn't triathlon related, or stuff that isn't triathlon related? Because it's not where I initially thought this whole conversation was going to be centered, but I'm just absolutely fascinated at the level that you've been able to get to in triathlon with And I just know that the difference between professionals is not necessarily that they train harder. Yes, they can fit some more time in, but generally for professional athletes, it's the removal of that external stress, which you're not
Yeah.
able to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think like I feel very fortunate that I have a really strong relationship with my coach, and I feel like he knows me really well and is able to tailor the load really, really well. And I also think at the same time, like even though I've only been doing triathlon for about 5 years now, I have 15 plus years of being an elite athlete prior to that. And I did swimming and soccer and cross country and track and kind of all those things. And then I biked kind of for fun as well. So I had probably 10 to 15,000 hours of different type of sport in the bank. And that has really just more been about translating that over to triathlon and kind of adapting the body's metabolic systems and everything to it. And so I think that's been a big part of the reason why I've had such like a rapid success and rapid rise is that, you know, a lot of that base was already there and we weren't starting from anything. But, you know, I do think that obviously there's a large importance of like consistency in training and how you train and everything. But I also think I would be remiss to say that like I do think that I have a metabolic physiologic ability that's quite well suited for triathlon. And so, you know, while I'm not, you know, I hate it when people throw around talent. I do think that there are aspects of my body that is more akin to triathlon than for other people.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you have to have good lineage and a bloodline, Matt. No doubt about that. Because before we move on to your entry into triathlon, what was your swimming stroke, and what was your discipline in swimming? What did you swim going to the US trials? What was the stroke?
Yeah, so I qualified in the 200 backstroke.
Okay,
so
interesting.
You know, it's a 2-minute race compared to a 50-minute swim for an Ironman. So big difference. And really the reason why I was as successful as a swimmer as I was is that in the US, we predominantly swim in 25 yards. So short course yards, which is even shorter than short course meters, meaning that you can really leverage the underwater portion of the race and backstroke and butterfly are really akin to that. And so that was really where my strength was kicking, which has obviously translated well over to the bike and things like that. But certainly open water swimming is, you know, yes, there's some similarities, but it's quite different, you know, than training in a pool where you get a micro break every 15 to 30 seconds.
Yeah. And that matters. Like it really does. Like honestly, you go from 25 yard to 25 meter, and then you go and swim in a 50 long course. The fitness that you got in the 25 yard, it feels like it's not there.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a big part of how kind of I optimize things is that like there are all these times within your day that can spend time. And so like it's a 4-minute bike to the pool. It's a 2-minute bike to the treadmill. Obviously I have my bike trainer in my apartment. There's a really great running trail nearby. So everything is very optimized towards that aspect. And so I lose very little time on my commute and other things. Because at my stage in life in particular, time is the most valuable resource for sure.
Oh, like I say, that's why I didn't want to pause the interview when that went, because I thought this is just eating into Matt's time. But so what got you interested in triathlon then? Because starting medical school, like this is one of the most time demanding amateur sports that you can get into. But I suppose you mentioned you ran track, you swam, and you also rode a lot mountain biking when you were a kid, because I asked you before we started the interview, you know, was Cape Epic your first time on a mountain bike? But quite obviously not. So you had all the raw materials as such, and 2021 was your first sort of tilt into age group racing?
Yeah, exactly. And so growing up, I think that I always knew that I would do triathlon at some point. I mean, I remember watching the Ironman World Championships on TV and things like that when I was growing up. But the thought was always that I would do it when I was 30 or 40. Now I was in my 20s. And so it really came down to like, it really was, spurred by the fact that my senior season for swimming was canceled because of COVID. And
Okay.
so like in the fall of my senior year, I was like, well, I don't have a swim season. And like, I'm a senior, I'm about to graduate from college. Like, what do I do with my time? And actually,
Yep.
the original answer to that was to bike across the country. So, I mean,
Not
which I
Ram.
think is a pretty
not the actual bike across, not the race across America.
Not Ram, but it was coast to coast.
Okay.
And I ended up doing it in 19 days. And so,
okay.
yeah, so
okay.
I had, so, if you want to look into my psyche, it's basically like, I was like, wow, I don't have anything to do. Wow, I've never had 3 weeks where I can do whatever I want before in my life. What do I want to spend that time on? And one of my dreams had always been to bike across the country. And so at that point in time, I think the 70 miles was the longest I had ever ridden at a given, like in one day.
Yep.
And so I told my parents about 6 weeks before that, hey, like I want to bike across the country during my winter break. And thankfully my dad said yes. And so we got in our family minivan, drove to San Diego, and I had a maximum of 23 days that I could do the ride, meaning that I had to bike a minimum of 110 miles every day without a rest day. And so it was a fun challenge because like, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like I truly didn't know if I could do it. And I ended up doing it in 19 days instead of 23.
So every day riding on your own. So just with parents supporting in the minivan.
Yeah. So I would start each morning, basically right at sunrise. And then my dad would do some work and meet me for lunch 4 or 5 hours later, somewhere down the road. I'd have lunch and then bike for another 3 or 4 hours, and he'd pick me up around sunset. And then we'd go to the hotel, and I'd eat a lot of food and then go to bed, and then we'd rinse and repeat the next day. So it was.
You were born for Ironman. You were born for Ironman.
Yeah. So after that, I was like, well, I still have a semester left in school. Like, what am I going to do to occupy my time? And so I decided to train for a half Ironman, and the rest is kind of history because one race led to the next.
Yeah. Well, it led to Kona, and it led to winning the 25 to 29 age group. Were you first age group across the line that day as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty good resume for most people to turn around and say, if I'm going to take this to the next level, it's obviously turn pro. Not many of those people are also picking up medical school. However, Andrew Yoder, who I've met and I know has done great things with you. You've obviously found a coach who's aligned with your vision. But between turning pro and let's say, it's only 2 years before, you're hitting podiums and, getting close to winning races. And was there a burning ambition to really see and think that, just in turning pro, I just don't want to be making up the numbers here. I actually think I can get to the top level of the sport.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly was a big decision in deciding when I turned pro. So actually, I qualified for my pro card. So 2021 was my first season. I call it like a half season because I did 170.3 and then 70.3 worlds, and that was that year. Well, I also did the USA Nationals, which was an Olympic distance race. But like, I call it a half season because like I kind of like just half-assed it. And at the end of that season, I actually had qualified for my pro card and made the intentional decision not to take it because even though I was doing well in that first season as an age grouper, like one, I wanted to win Kona as an age grouper, and two, we felt like there was more development that needed to happen to me kind of physiologically as well as a racer before going to pro. So like, one thing that I like always tell people is that people like want to take their pro card as soon as they get it. And I'm like, look, do you really want to like the pro dynamics are so different than being an age
Yeah.
grouper. Like, do you really want to take it immediately and then go from doing quite well in age group races to being back of the pack as a pro? And so we made the like very intentional decision to wait in another full season before I turned pro, and that paid off with huge dividends, because the first race I did as a pro I am in Texas in 2023, I got third. So like, you know, whereas like, you know, that otherwise might not have happened. And so it was definitely the right call to wait to take that pro card.
Yeah, because you're absolutely right. Taking it earlier, you're just going to end up making up the numbers at the back end of the race. But if you truly have ambitions to race well as a pro, bring the right physiology and bring the right fitness to the table, especially because where your swim is and was, you're always going to taste the front of the race early in your pro career.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. Like, we knew that like I had the potential to be at the front of the race from the beginning, and we wanted to make sure that my bike abilities was up there so that I wouldn't just like blow up if I stuck with people, you know? So that was a big part of the decision, as well as like we wanted me to be well-rounded throughout the race. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about racing pro then, because, you know, your name came onto the scene really quickly. And then not long after podiums, you know, if these are podiums in major races, pro series races as such, it was probably the bike that really impressed me the most. And we'll go on to the run and talk about how that's evolved as well. But your capacity on the bike has been really, really impressive. And even before the cramp issues and then after the cramp issues, for various reasons, you could hold your own against the best cyclists in the world. And as we talked about at the beginning, this doesn't come off the back of these mega volume weeks or mega, you know, weeks that everyone's posting about. So how did you evolve the bike in the way that you have to get it to this level?
Yeah, I mean, that's like all like Yoder. That's all Andrew's like, you know, one of the decisions I made very early on is talk about the mental load of things. Like, even though like I started working with Andrew before I started medical school, but based off of some things I had learned in college as a swimmer, I knew basically when I started the sport that I wanted someone that was going to tell me what to do, and then I would do it. And so as time has gone on, we certainly have conversations about training, but most of it is like him writing it and me doing it. And then I give some feedback. But you know, like, it's really kind of been his, I guess, success in terms of really kind of crafting me and developing me super well on the bike. And I think a big part of what a lot of it comes down to is that I'm highly controlled during training. And so partially from an efficiency standpoint, based on time, as well as an efficiency and effectiveness of the workout, like I do a lot of my training on the treadmill and on the trainer. Removing some of those environmental variables, I think, has enabled me to have very effective, highly efficient workouts, which I think has really helped. And then over time, we've learned how to fold in just enough kind of outdoor riding to maintain that feel for the road and kind of work on the durability aspect of, you know, the vibrations and bumps and everything that you get on the road. So I think that's really been a key to success, is just highly controlled and highly intentional training, kind of day after day, week after week, etc.
As someone who doesn't hit the higher volumes that we hear quoted, does that mean that we've squeezed a bit more intensity into what would be your typical week than maybe what we'd see in other pro programs? And for you, was that learning to ride at the paces that you intended to race at, or was it a more polarized approach? I mean, Andrew himself was a noted swim biker, so he's obviously learned a lot in terms of the bike aspect of it and what works for him. But do you feel that you're doing a little bit more intensity on those sessions on the indoor bike that has allowed you to get to this point?
I can't really say one way or the other because truthfully, I really don't know what other people are doing. That's been like, I think one of my other fundamentals since starting is that I really tried to stay out of the noise as much as possible and really kind of in some ways stay out of the sport, or at least stay out of the pro sport as much as possible, because one of the things I found in swimming is you do a lot of pace work in swimming, just like you do a lot of, stuff at power on the bike. And I found myself being during practice being if I want to beat so-and-so, I need to be able to go this pace. And or my best time is this, I need to be hitting this pace. And if I don't hit that pace, then the season's not going to go well. And so I really tried to have a very open mindset from the beginning, and intentionally tried to stay very naive to what other people were doing so that I wouldn't unintentionally or intentionally create a ceiling on myself. And so still to this day, I don't really know necessarily what Magnus or Sam Laidlow can do on the bike in terms of their FTP or their lactate threshold or whatever, because I don't really care and I don't really want to know. But I would say overall, I think we're very, I think that's Bruno Mars going by. There's a concert at the Ohio Stadium.
As long as you're not called into the ED halfway through this, we'll be fine.
No.
That's a very interesting approach, because that open mindset is. I think social media, if you follow the sport, generally leads people into negative thought patterns. And if you just worry about what you're capable of doing and continue to focus on that, not only in training, but then when it comes to racing, you don't go in there with too much fear about what you preconceive other athletes are in comparison to you. You just focus on yourself.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I think that's been a big part of, I think, mentally, how I've approached the sport. And I think that's obviously done me quite well. And I kind of let Andrew worry about the numbers. So I know that he knows some of those things. And so he'll kind of give me, little nudges of okay, you're doing well, or you're getting to this level or that level. But for the most part, I don't really care.
Just
all I care about is getting a little bit better each day. And that's really what gets me excited, is when I have a workout where I've hit a new power PR or pace PR or whatnot. That's what I find to be the most exciting and the most fun.
Okay. Chopping wood and carrying water every single day, and just focusing on that moment and not getting too far ahead of yourself. It's a wonderful asset to have. And in your career to date, I mean, you've had different ways that races have unfolded. And I remember your Kona professional debut, sitting on the front of what was an incredible race, sitting there in the bike and leading that event. So you've raced at the very front, but then you've also had to play catch up. And we'll talk a little bit about this with the cramping issues that plagued you through 2025. Staying in the moment and remaining as confident as possible, because you've had some very different races and very different race outcomes to try to have to deal with.
Yeah. And, I certainly think in many ways I would prefer not to have had the cramps.
Yeah.
I certainly, certainly things would have been quite different, I think, at some of the races. At the end of the day, I think I feel very fortunate and grateful to have had them, because it taught me and showed me a completely different way to race that I think most people don't know. I can basically do, off the front, or I can also do Lionel Sanders or Sam Long and come from the back. And so to be able to do either or, I think brings me personally a lot of confidence, and also hopefully, keeps competitors on their toes, because they know that even if Matthew's not right here, he could be coming up. And so, but I think, more for me, before the 2025 season, I felt like, like if I don't hit that front pack in the swim, like not that the race is over, but like that, the race will be, that it won't be possible to win. Like maybe I can podium, but like I can't win. And so to have had the cramps and have had to overcome that adversity, I think has actually been like a huge blessing and just taught me a completely different way to race, and provides a lot more confidence in knowing like, hey, like no matter what happens early on in the race, like you still have the ability to be competitive on the back half.
Yeah. Well, I would, honestly, it would have ruined many other professional triathletes' races, just the psychological challenge of knowing, because unfortunately, those cramps were played out very publicly on a lot of the coverages. And they were literally debilitating. And if, Cairns Ironman, which was awesome to see you come all the way across to Australia to race that race. And look, it's only now probably just on a month away, or even slightly less than that now. But if I take you back to that race, showing what you were able to do when, honestly, you must have bled 5 or 10 minutes coming out of the water. How long were you dealing with cramps? And I've got to be honest.
I think it was a solid 10 minutes that I lost.
Yeah, but it's also because of that horrific beach finish for the swim, with it's such a steep get out as well. I think that's where your quad started to lock up on you straight away.
Yeah, it was pretty early into transition, so I had to hobble my way through basically all transition, which was actually quite a long transition, because they kind of have you run around the whole perimeter and then get on the bike and then kind of work through it for a while, and then just kind of have the patience of knowing that like, hey, like you just get like, I think like your inherent reaction is like once the legs loosen up that you just need to hammer. And so I really had to kind of pull myself back and say, no, like you need to be patient. The time will come where you can really start to push. And, it's an Ironman is all about energy management and where you're going to spend that energy. And I kind of decided that I was going to save it up for later in the race. And that move ended up being the right move to make.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, that's a psychological hurdle to overcome. If I take you back even further from that, when you were your position in the Pro Ironman series in 2024, the result at Taupo 70.3. I mean, I live in Taupo. This is our hometown world champs. That was something that you weren't really able to overcome that day. So there's another aspect of this where that plagued you at the back end of 2024 going on to 2025. And everyone had some advice to Dr. Matt as to what the problem was. But, it's an unusual cramp that doesn't sort of present itself as what we would traditionally think cramp should. And I'm glad that you found the solution for it. But how challenging was it through that period? Because you knew that this was actually inhibiting you in a way that, luckily enough, you were still able to come back from. But the solution was not easy to find.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was like psychologically, it was quite challenging, I would say, from kind of December of 2024 with that 70.3 world champs.
Yeah.
Through really Cairns, it was like, I don't necessarily want to say a dark time, because I think perspective wise, like I want to reserve that for times that truly are dark. But, it was a challenging time, because you're like, well, like, I don't know what's going on here. And like, the only way we can know if it's fixed or not is by racing. And
because you couldn't simulate it. You can't simulate it
in training, and it happened at Texas, and it was a little bit better at Texas than it was at New Zealand, but it still took me a really long time to recover from it. And then St. George was also, pretty debilitating on that one too. And so that was all kind of like, man, like what's going on here? Like it sucks to what was most frustrating about all of it was I had actually put in a really great off season of training. And what was the most frustrating was not the result, but not being able to express that training and that fitness and those improvements that had been happened. And so that was really kind of what was the most just distressing, if you will. And but I think like as a medical student and a scientist, like you just have to go about it one thing at a time. And so we really tried to look at every single variable that could possibly be causing it, and slowly but surely, one race after the next, kind of try and rule things out. And by the after Worlds, in my mind, it was pretty clear that it was likely the carb load that was driving things. And I had really hoped that Cozumel was going to be the opportunity to really prove that for certain. But then I freak pulled my part of my glute like the 6 days before the race. And so wasn't able to race, but I still went down there because I had hoped that like I could race. And we ended up doing a simulated, well, like I pulled out of the race the day before. So like the taper was the same, the training into it was the same. And so I was like, well, this is a perfect opportunity to test the carb load theory out. And so like did a reduced carb load and did my own simulated swim the next morning, and was fine. And so that, was really the first sign that, okay, maybe this was it. But I think I'm very cautious about what I put on social media, because the last thing I want to do is, direct people the wrong direction. Like all of last year, people were saying like, what do you think it is? Like, give us hypotheses. And I was like, no, I'm not going to say anything until I feel pretty confident that I know what the answer is, because I don't know, too many people talk on social media without thinking or without having any evidence behind it. And so I really wanted to make sure to come at it with a more informed perspective. And, I think I won't feel absolutely certain until my next race where it doesn't happen again, but I do feel relative, like call it 95% certain that we have the answer at this point. So
yeah. Well, it's such a unusual cramp. So we all think of electrolyte imbalances or fatigue related or neuromuscular, or just some form of depletion, or just overall fatigue of an event. But it's literally back end of the swim, coming from a prone position, standing up, attempting to run, and all of a sudden both quads just the fascia, the quad muscle itself just says no. And so to go out on social media and tell everyone that you've got a cure for cramping when no one else is cramping in the same way that you are in that point in the race is like you couldn't go out there and say, I've got the solution for everyone who cramps.
Right, exactly. And, that's, as you've seen, like through my social media posts, I always try and make things like that very clear, or at least somewhat clear, that like, hey, like I'm not like, this probably isn't what's, relevant for everyone, or even it's probably only relevant to a very, very small portion of people, but like, this is what's going on with me. And this is what's helping me. So you're welcome to try it if you want, but like, I'm not necessarily saying that this is the cure for everything.
Well, do you know why?
Something like cramping, as you said, there's so many different things that can cause it and trigger it. Like you could have 10 people that cramp, and there's 10 different reasons why they cramp.
Yeah. So. Look, if it's any consolation, in my racing career, I would cramp in the quads from swim during the first part of the bike if I was to get up out of the saddle and climb. So it wasn't fatigue related. Certainly it was some sort of neuromuscular disconnect as such. Certainly wasn't an electrolyte imbalance. And I could ride quite comfortably in a position in aero, but I could not climb out of the saddle because both quads would lock up. Now,
interesting.
There's no point in the race that any of the current theories in and around cramping could solve that problem for me. So it's an N equals 1. I found a solution for me. You found a solution for you. So just so that listeners understand where we think you're 95% confident at the moment in terms of the carb loading, what have you changed in order to try to address the cramps?
Yeah, I mean, like, so specifically for me, what we found was I was doing a carb load around closer to 12 grams of carbs per kilogram of body mass, which is certainly on the upper end of what the literature says you should do for a carb load. I've had some people comment that like carb loads are, baloney, but, I would say for the most part, the literature does support like a carb load. And that was part of the reason why it took me so long to test that out. So basically before 70.3 Worlds in 2024, I'd never really done a carb load. Why? I couldn't really tell you. I, for the most part, ate like my normal style of meals the day before race, just a lot lower in fiber. And at 70.3 Worlds, I was like, oh, there's all this literature that shows that it's beneficial, et cetera. And so I tried it, cramped. And kind of through the rest of 2025, we looked at different things because I was like, well, a big part of it was like mechanistically, I couldn't rationalize why the carb load would be causing it.
Yeah.
I still can't. And
that would be the
honestly,
last place.
You're right. Like it doesn't mechanistically, it doesn't really make sense. But also at the same time, at this point, I don't really care.
No, because some of these things we can't back up with science.
Right. We can't. Like I cannot tell you why a carb load is causing me to cramp. I can only provide what we call empiric evidence that it is. Yeah. And so basically, before South Africa and before the simulated swim at Cozumel, I cut it in about half and was closer to around 7 to 8 grams of carbs per kilogram of body mass over the entire day. So that's not net carbs, that's total carbs. And the diet is almost exclusively carbs still the day before, and it's still very low in fiber. And so that's like what I've changed and what hopefully will continue to be the solution for me. So.
Yeah. Well, look, even with the cramping, you won Cairns, you won Placid. And like you say, out of adversity, we tend to learn a lot of things, and you learned how to race in a different style. And the bike power and the bike prowess, the bike splits that you've been able to put together have brought you back into races and, to the front of these races. The other area that you've improved, I believe, the most significantly, because I think a lot of people would say, Dr. Matt, he carries a lot of lean muscle mass. You've your legs, quads, hips, glutes. Can he get to those sort of run levels that we are seeing the best athletes in the world produce at the moment? And I think, certainly Placid, a fantastic run. Nice World Champs, another great run as well. I'm pretty sure you would have been happy with that race, given the hilly nature of that course. I don't know if you consider yourself a climber or not. But you've been able to bring that run totally into that world-class sort of realm. Anytime someone's running under 240, having been at the front of the race all the time, they're going to be putting themselves in position for success. And you did so at South Africa as well. And in South Africa, it was almost like, you had quite a dominant lead in that race. It was almost like, is he still going to run quick? But it's hard to take the foot off the gas at times as well. But so the bike has obviously evolved a lot. But you must be super, super happy where the progress in the run is at the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, last year, I would say like 2024 was what I call it, was like the year of the bike, where my bike really got to the next level. That was the year where I set the bike course record at Lake Placid. It was the year where at Texas, I overrode a little bit and had like a 13-minute lead coming off the bike compared to the main chase group. And so 2024 was very much the year of the bike. And since then, the focus has really been on the run and making my run more efficient, as well as just, I think getting faster. And so some of that has helped as the bike has continued to improve. That means that I don't necessarily have to overexert myself as much on the bike at certain points. And then also, I think just continuing to layer day after day with the run and making sure that's a big focus has really kind of led to the success that I've had, which has been which has been fun because obviously it's no fun to blow up at the end of a race.
Well, I mean, everyone brings to the table a slightly different genetic predisposition. I think you talked about maybe having talent. You're loath to actually give yourself the credit for having some of that, but I do think there's certainly some talent there. But I think the biggest question marks would have been over whether Matt can get himself in as a runner, because everyone, I mean, you've got your own unique style. I'm sure a lot of people have said, Matt, you could maybe improve biomechanics or not. Everyone's got an opinion. Stay away from the noise. That's the best. That's the best way to go about it. But I would say that the running was always going to be the biggest question because you don't fit into the category of some of the smaller builds that are actually running these really quick times at the moment.
Right. Yeah, and I think like there's certainly, I think what everyone always focuses on power to weight ratio and that you have to be lean to run, and I certainly think yes, like could I lean out more and lose some muscle mass and maybe my run would be better, but it would most likely come at the detriment of the bike.
Yeah.
And so there's always this pros and cons type of equation that you have to run of like, okay, like, do I want to lose some strength? Because honestly, in modern day triathlon, most of the races still rely on a good amount of strength. Like even Kona for us pros really isn't that hilly. There's really only a small handful of courses where I think like pure weight really, really matters. And that's something like Nice or Lake Placid. And so at the end of the day, like if you can't push power, then like you're gonna be at a detriment. So, it's something we've certainly thought about, but also I think you also have to play that, think about the injury risk. So like, yes, if I tried to lose 10 pounds, would I be more efficient? Yes. But also if you get injured in the process of doing that, it doesn't matter. So, that's the thing that like, I think a lot of people don't think about is like, hey, like it's better to pull back 5% on your training than keep it where it's at. And then you get injured because of it. And so, like if you can't even show up at the race, you're automatically going to lose. So I think that's something that people just need to keep in mind a little bit more often than they do.
If you can't get to the race to actually post a marathon split, we can't talk about whether the power to weight ratio has been any good or not.
Exactly.
But then also you've seen progress without having to even consider whether weights are limited to you at the moment or not. And like I say, the way the races are unfolding, you've done very, very well in the Pro Ironman series and won a mini and Ironman with a sub 240 split. And if you're at the front of that race for the predominance of it, should cramping not hold you back, that's going to put you in with a chance to run for the win. So the progress, I'm sure, can continue without weight or anything like that being a focus at the moment. Talking about doing it differently, we talked before we started recording, and I was wondering, is Matt going to actually focus on the Pro Ironman series or not? And I think off doing the Cape Epic mountain bike race at the beginning of the year I was like, is Matt actually going to do triathlon this year or not? So when did that opportunity come up? And I saw your Instagram post of Gantel Pass. That was an injury risk waiting to happen, wasn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, I mean, certainly like it's gonna sound quite cocky, but I wasn't really concerned about the physiologic toll of Cape Epic, mainly because for me, the main purpose of doing it was to raise money for the Ironman Foundation and raise money, which went towards purchasing bikes and swim lessons for kids in South Africa. So it was never about racing it. It was never about pushing myself to the absolute limit. But like it's mountain biking and it's not something that I do all the time. And so the bigger concern was like on the injury side of things. And so, I certainly was more careful on some of the descents. But going down Ganto Pass, I was like, man, this is like, I'm not even on the bike right now. And this is the part of the race where I'm the most scared that I'm going to get injured because it was just like, it was wet, it was slippery, like
Oh,
it was raining, like, and you're like going down this very steep hill with all these
rocky.
like rocks that are very smooth in mountain bike shoes.
Yeah.
And so like I was like, man, like this is like my nightmare. But thankfully I got through that. And yeah, like the doing Cape Epic was definitely a non-traditional decision.
Yep.
But also I think, like for me, triathlon is this incredible hobby and gift that I've been given to be able to do and to do at a high level. It's not ultimately my career. Like that's not a secret to anyone. And I made a promise to myself when I started the sport that like I was still going to live life while doing it. Because I felt like when I was a swimmer that I had missed out on parts of life because I was so focused on swimming. And so, Cape Epic, like there was the cruise last year. This year there was Cape Epic where like this opportunity came to me to, kind of fulfill part of my mission in the sport, which is to use sport to do good in the world. And it was like a really cool opportunity that like, truthfully, I don't think that I'll ever be able to do again. Like I'd love to be able to do another Cape Epic, but like logistically, like it will be really hard for me to do it ever again. And I kind of realized that and was like, like I think it's worth it. Like I think the risk reward is worth it. And I talked about it with my coach and he was like, yeah, like we'll figure out how to continue some of your training and at a minimum you're going to get a really great bike training load out of it. And so we decided to do it and I had a great time and definitely formed lifelong memories and some new friendships through it. So it all worked out like super well.
Yeah. Well, it was Cape Epic, but you went back to the States and then came back again, back to South Africa.
Yeah.
So you don't mind doing a long haul flight, do you, Matt?
Well, it was so funny. Like before Cairns last year, I really had tried to avoid major travel. For a lot of different reasons. One is financial. Obviously, it's quite expensive to travel internationally, but the bigger one was the performance side. Like, my really only experience before Cairns traveling was traveling to Nice for World Champs. And like, we got there like 2 weeks early to like acclimate. And I was like, I can't do that for every race. Like, there's no way. But with Cairns, I got there because of the timeline and everything. I got there like 4 or 5 days before the race and, obviously did quite well. And so since then, I think I've become much more comfortable with traveling long distances and still also being able to perform well. And so when it came down to it, like I decided to do Cape Epic and then we were thinking about like, okay, what race do I do? Originally we were kind of thinking Texas. I knew that I had to come back to the States because like I had major medical school exam. And when it came down to thinking like, do I do Texas? Do I do South Africa? Again, it really came down to like, I'd wanted to do South Africa for a long time, but like, it's a long trip. Like it's a long trip to do it. And it's a big part of travel. And also historically, like the financial payout didn't necessarily make sense. But this year I was like, like I actually have, because of how school's been scheduled, like I actually have the time to go down and I probably won't have this opportunity again. Like Texas is a 2-hour flight. I can always do that. That's super easy for me to do that race. And so it was just like a no-brainer. Like, let's do South Africa this year, even though it means I took like 2 of the top 15 longest flights in the world twice in the span of 4 weeks, which was pretty crazy. But like I don't know, I've figured out to do it pretty well, even though I was sitting in the back of the plane.
Well, you didn't get sick.
Yeah.
And I
didn't get sick.
When you got back from Cape Epic, I think you were back into training relatively quickly. And so lost training time and not getting sick are the two biggest obstacles of those long haul trips. And then when you went back to South Africa, well, a record-breaking performance, really. And the other smart move there, which I think, as we briefly touched on, you're sort of waiting to see how much you're going to focus on the Pro Ironman series this year. With Placid being your next event, defending champion there, you go to an African championship. There's a little bit better payday at the regional championships as well, which is a good thing. And it's a regional championship, and you get your Kona slot, for those people. So there's a lot of reasons and positives as to why you made that choice.
Yeah. And another big part of deciding to do South Africa was when we made the decision, we weren't sure if I was going to cramp or not. And the bike course in South Africa is particularly challenging because of the road conditions and because of the winds that happen. And so we wanted to put myself in a race environment where if I did have the cramps, that I would be able to work my way back to the front of the race. Whereas, even with the 20-meter rule this year, like we knew that Texas was still going to be kind of a train effect, and that there was going to be these groups, and that if you weren't in that front group, that it was going to be a really, really hard battle to get back up to the front. So that was another part of the reason why we were like, let's do South Africa to start off the year, hopefully guarantee that Kona slot, and then we can go from there. So we'll kind of see how the rest of the season goes. There's still plenty of opportunities to get the 5 races in for the Pro Series, and we'll certainly pursue that if it makes sense. But also, I think it's no secret at this point that I'm better at Ironman full distance racing, and I have a limited time in the sport, and I think it's important to really optimize and maximize those opportunities to do the races that I'm the best at. So we'll kind of see how everything goes and play it by ear.
What do you mean a limited time in the sport, Matt? Are you going to pick up a part-time job?
I can't do this till I'm 40 or 45. No. I can't train 25 hours a week and do 80 or 90 hours a week of residency.
No. Actually, that is true. We do need to not see you in an early grave is one thing. But I just want to finish off with talking about your interests outside of triathlon, and you're very philanthropic. Not only the Ironman Foundation, but Pelotonia is a massive cancer research charity that you're involved with. And not only are you giving your time to the sport and to your residency, but you do have that real philanthropic drive as well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's the reason why I wanted to become a doctor. I don't know. But I think from when I started the sport, I knew that I wanted to use the sport to have a bigger, make a bigger impact, a positive impact in the world. And I had done some cancer fundraising stuff prior to triathlon, and I want to become a cancer surgeon. And so that was like the obvious kind of path to put my passion behind. And Pelotonia was just a natural fit when I started here, that it just kind of all really fell together like super well, where my interests as well as the community here and the fundraiser and it's been a very natural fit, and super proud to be a part of it, and feel very fortunate that I can contribute to the world triathlon and beyond in this very unique way.
Yeah. Well, amongst everything else that you've got going on at the moment, you're probably in the final preps as you head towards Placid. An incredible race there last year. That run course, to run as quick as you did on that run course, win that race. I know you and Trevor Foley. Is Trevor doing Placid? I think he's doing Placid, isn't he?
I've got to imagine he is. I'd be surprised if he's not.
But that's a great event, and I'm sure you've got some fond memories from last year. And it's your first sort of dipping of the toes back into that Pro Ironman series where the fields are pretty deep these days. So I'm sure you're looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it'll be great. Placid's always one of my favorite races because even though it's a 12-hour drive away from me, it very much has a hometown feel. And I've always raced well there, and always very much enjoyed it. So I'm definitely looking forward to going back, and hopefully we'll be able to defend. But if not, that's okay.
Okay. All right, Matt. Well, thank you for giving us so much time to chat about your history and your time in the sport to date. I'm sure there's a few more years left in you before you do step away from it. But I am super, super glad that I took an hour out of your 36-hour day for you to come on the podcast. Well, you are going to be missed at IRONMAN Cairns this year. We'll be over there racing, so there'll be a new winner there. But we do hope to get you back over to this side of the world sometime in the future.
Yeah, I hope to return to that side of the world too. I had really great memories.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and all the best for the rest of your season.
Thank you.